and good evening. This is a Manx Labour Party Wednesday night special, and it's a big welcome to Sam and Kerri. So we're here, it's 10 o'clock, it's midweek, and we've got a good audience already, so we welcome everyone for tuning in so far. And this evening we're going to talk about gender and the subject on the Isle of Man and beyond. And we've got Kerri with us and Sam. Sam, Manx Labour Party member, Douglas councillor, features in the headlines now and again. And we're just
hopefully for good things.
We're just going to have a gentle discussion that's going to perhaps just, I don't know, let's wipe the slate clean. Let's just start from the beginning. Let's just talk about things in earnest as they are, and for those that are listening, and if you want to get involved, please comment in the box. We'll answer questions, we'll discuss, we'll share our views, and we'll get the ball rolling. So Sam and Kerri, just take it away. Just take it away.
Sure, yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself first, Kerri? I got a nice introduction, but Jed doesn't know you quite so well. So
I'm Kerri. I'm known just for being vocal about trans issues. As a transgender woman myself, it's an important issue to me, and I'm not alone in this fact on the Isle of Man. I know several other transgender individuals from various genders, and that's why it's important, I felt, to join in with this conversation tonight.
Yeah, thank you for joining me, because otherwise it would end up being just in all honesty, a cis white guy talking about gender is it's a bit of a trope. So thank you for joining me.
I'm the diversity hire.
You're the diversity hire, exactly. Yeah.
But you must say that this is like a first for Isle of Man TV, Isle of Man Facebook. I'd say so. It's great that we're talking after 10 o'clock, and basically we've got the reins.
For us, Jed.
We've got the reins. We can talk about anything. So let's just get the ball rolling. We can talk about, say, the Manx Labour Party. Okay. So Kerri, obviously, you know Sam. What's the connection?
Sam and I used to work together at a web development company.
Yeah, we're just friends, really.
Yeah, just made friends through that, and we've stayed connected since.
And
Sam, she's taught me an awful lot about gender over the years.
Well, Sam, I know, I know that we've talked about this, and we've been hatching these little live stream sessions and what have you. And this is something which is passionate to you. I know that, I can tell.
Yeah, well, it frustrates me that even like well-meaning people sometimes just aren't educated when it comes to gender. Like even like the most vocal like people who I would consider allies when it comes to liberation struggles and like progressive issues in other areas are just kind of oblivious to the intricacies of gender, and it's quite frustrating. I don't know if you feel the same.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, come on, Kerri. It's a step. You're on the screen. Let's talk about life on the Isle of Man.
Life on the Isle of Man, for the most part, it's pretty good here. We face very little in the way of discrimination, and our biggest hurdles tend to be in medical intervention. Though there is some discriminatory practices that are enacted by individuals or corporations here, they're not wide scale, and we afford ourselves a lot of tolerance rather than acceptance. And that just means that most people are so involved in their own bubbles that they don't care to get involved in the lives of other people. And so transgender people can move around pretty safely on the Isle of Man, which, I'm thankful for.
We've just got a comment appeared on the screen, and we'll drop it in straight away. So I can actually put this on the screen. You'll be able to see what the question is.
Sure.
So, and it's why do you think people struggle with this issue? What are the intricacies? Can you introduce those, please?
Sure. Do you want to start with this, or do you want me to?
I'd like to see what your thoughts on
You,
this are
do you
first.
want to correct me once,
Yeah.
once I go wrong? Sure. So, one of the things that I think causes a lot of confusion is gender has been confused with the concept of biological sex for well, about 40 years now. But actually, like gender was never meant to describe the same thing as biological sex. Gender, in reference to how we use it now, only dates back to about 1955. When it was never then meant to refer to biological sex, but was a term created by John Money, who is a bit of a problematic sexologist if you look into his history, unfortunately. But he did come up with the term. And it was, even at the onstart, meant to be different from what biological sex was. He originally defined it as characteristics pertaining to and differentiating between femininity and masculinity. Before 1955, if you said the word gender, you were referring to like grammatical categories. You weren't referring to what we would describe as gender, femininity, masculinity, etc. So from the very beginning, gender as a word was not meant to describe biological sex. But during the 1980s or thereabouts, it started sneaking into government documents as a basically something that could be interchangeable with the word sex or with biological sex, and that confusion has stayed around like up until today. There's still a lot of people who are oblivious to the fact that gender isn't and never has described biological sex. So I think that's one of the biggest confusions you get with gender is, and the thing that really needs to be driven home is that there was a confusion that happened in the 1980s, not helped by various departments in government who started using the terminology that way, which has just kind of remained until this day. So I'd say that's the biggest point to drive home when it comes to differences between gender and sex and the intricacies.
But say where we live in our community on the Isle of Man, I think we can accept that there is confusion about the subject, Kerri.
Absolutely. I've encountered many people who, usually in good faith, try and ask me what's it all about, because I don't make a habit of trying to hide the fact that I am a transgender person. And so when I'm open about that, people come to me with questions about that, extending from the obvious biological components to more conceptual ones. Gender, as we understand it, is it's not something that's actually taught about. Rather, we have sex education, and we learn about male and female, and we associate that with gender because male and female are cultural genders. But there's also a plethora of genders between, around, and outside of that binary.
Can we turn the clock back though? Because a mature adult who is perhaps wise, seasoned, experienced, may have an attitude and ability to manage this. But what about someone who's growing up in the teens and earlier?
What do you mean, Jed? Sorry, that's a bit of a confused with the question.
How would you manage? How do people manage that?
As in, how do people manage being transgender, or how do people manage accepting that gender is a different thing?
And growing up.
Most transgender people actually know from an early age that the gender they want to be perceived as is different to the gender they've been assigned at birth. Whether this is strictly adhering to the binary or beyond, it doesn't matter. They know they're different, and they'll tend towards activities, clothing styles, speech patterns that mirror the gender they desire to be perceived as.
So, how does the framework in education and society deal with that and manage it and be sympathetic?
Currently, there isn't, as far as I'm aware, a framework to accept that. I know some teachers independently, especially in secondary schools, will start teaching the differences between gender and sex, but it's not expected. It's something that I know that the Department of Education here are working on improving. But largely, younger people get their information online or from friends and family, or even just a general practitioner if they seek information medically.
So, if we go back to the school, we've got Sarah has just asked, do you believe gender difference should be taught via the science lessons or within the PSHE curriculum?
I believe both.
I would think both as well.
One thing we're commonly taught in biology, which I'm not against being taught, is that sex-based characteristics are decided by your chromosomal makeup. For the majority, that is true. XX is girl, XY is boy. But there are many edge cases where that isn't true. We know there are intersex sexes. There's a variety of male and female sex incongruencies. So XX and XY isn't set in stone. And I think during those science lessons, that needs to be highlighted, that there can be deviancies.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel that there is a science aspect to both gender and biological sex, and there is a sociological aspect to it as well. Because one thing that I was never taught in school was that that sex is not binary, but is bimodal. That there isn't just a simple male and female. There's in regards to biological sex, but it is in fact like a massive sliding scale of everything in between, of which we've just kind of thrown something down and said this group here is male, this group here is female, and certainly when it comes to the likes of medical issues that a lot of transgender people face specifically, that certainly would be going more into the science side, such as a lot of transgender people, though not all transgender people, suffer from something that's known as body trans. I'm going to get it wrong.
Gender dysphoria.
Gender dysphoria. Thank you. The thing is, I use that term very often. I'm just kind of blagging at this point. I get very nervous when I'm on the spot.
Well, blimey, I'm nervous as well. I'll just put something. We've got Alan Shea who's contributed and is sharing that Isle of Man is a very good place for LGBTQ people on the island, and I would say that
certainly
in the recent past, I would say that there has been a change. Would you say that, Kerri, in attitude?
I would agree, absolutely. We certainly have to thank Alan Shea for being a part of that back in '92.
Absolutely.
The Timor protests were quite dramatic. I wasn't even born then, to put some perspective on that, though. And more recently, there have been more and more movements to help improve awareness of and facilitate for people who aren't cisgender or heterosexual. So that's encompassing most of the LGBT umbrella. And we are looking at improving our services all the time.
So could you just tell me about the group on the island, Kerri? Just try and give us an idea of the structure, how welcoming, how easy it is, how would someone get in touch and get involved?
So which group are you specifically referring to?
I'd say the community that Alan Shea referred to.
So the Isle of Man doesn't have a specific set community. We all kind of find each other at functions that are promoting something to do with LGBTQ. So you might take Rainbow Nights at the Saddle for an example. It's a lot of word of mouth. It's a lot of, hey, I know you're queer. I've got a queer friend. Why don't I introduce you? and smaller communities form within that. Not all the communities get on with each other because just like outside of LGBTQ, not all straight people are the same, not all trans people are the same, not all uh, lesbians, gays, bisexuals are the same.
Not a monolith, certainly.
Yeah, so we all have differences, and those parts of the community that do get on with each other just stay together. That's largely once we found each other. We
You
stay in
just
contact.
mentioned about the Knights at the Saddle. Just tell us a bit more about that.
They're usually just a drag act by Vida Lewis, for example. She's a great performer. And it's drinks, bright colors, loud music. It's just a fun time. It's like, beyond that, it doesn't have to be anything else.
But that does sound
Absolutely, just
it does sound
hanging
a
out in
little-
a safe environment.
But it does sound a little bit specialised. I'm not seeing the wider picture, the welcoming picture we've talked about. You know, what should be spoken about in schools, what should be delivered in education, and I'm not feeling that is being undertaken at the moment. Would that be fair?
It wouldn't be unfair to say in that we're still moving towards introducing that. I know I've personally been involved with projects to help improve that. We've had people from the UK come over and talk to educators, MHKs, to try and improve just awareness of it and why it needs to be taught. So in the next few years, we're very likely to see that improve.
I think one of the biggest problems, if you don't mind me
Go for
speaking
it.
about it, I think one of the biggest issues on the island we have, and this is true of the UK as well, is really just a general misunderstanding of the arguments of gender in general. Like, so I think it's one thing to say that the those in power aren't doing enough to help, which would be true. But I would say that there is a grassroots effort that is continual at the moment on the Isle of Man and elsewhere to just try and gain greater understanding, acceptance, and visibility. Do you think that's fair?
I think that's fair, absolutely.
So, although I think you're right, Jed, that more could be done to help the community, as it were, from the powers that be. I think really most of it is, grassroots activism and teaching and, that type of thing.
Just going to throw another a couple of pointers onto the screen. So we've got from Chris here, who's kindly said this is really informative. Thank you, Sam and Kerri. Sam is absolutely right to say that this isn't an area that was covered in our education. So what is the situation in schools now? Has it improved? And I'm not aware of anything concrete. I know that there's an acceptance, and I know with having children that have gone through the schools, well, there's more awareness, but I'm not seeing any identity. Would that be fair?
As of this moment, that might be fair. I imagine this will change very soon in the future. There are a couple of youth-focused LGBT groups on the Isle of Man. I personally chaperone a couple of after-school clubs and in-school clubs working with LGBT children, including trans children. So that's like our school presence. It's there. People who feel like they need that assistance can come to people who have experience and understanding and empathy towards them.
Would it be fair to say that it's
but
seen as niche still? To
It
some
is
extent?
definitely seen as niche
Yeah.
still.
Okay.
Rather than gender and sexuality and biological sex being something that we should all be taught and is part of humanity. Full stop. It's seen as this is the where you go if you're not normal, and then everyone else just gets the which is.
I mean, it's less like that. Most of the people who need these services are signposted through other services, even though we do try and advertise it a bit more widely. There's an element of safeguarding and sensitivity where we don't want to expose anyone to unnecessary discrimination.
Sure, yeah. Makes sense.
You've seen the comment on the screen here, Sam. So that's from
Yeah,
Kira.
sorry. The screen where our comments are up there, so it always looks like we're looking up to the rafters each time we look at the comment you put on screen. But yes, I can see that.
It's like you're in the NASA control room, but with a Manx Labour Party badge. That's good. That's good. But so as of 2 years
So it's
ago,
like we're looking up at a god who's telling us what he thinks. Sort of.
we were taught nothing about gender. So that's Kiara from the party, and
2 years
that's
ago
talking about school and really, I think there's a few things I need to get off my chest, okay, and ask you. So
sure.
I hope you don't mind. So,
well, we're here to answer questions primarily. We did a lot of research on like gender historically, so really will welcome questions.
Well, for Kerri, just tell me about some good experiences and not so good experiences.
I've definitely got more good experiences to share. For one, and because it's like a media controversy, I have never been attacked in a bathroom. That's something a lot of people fear, especially trans people, especially when you see like the bathroom question posed as a media headline. So I've never encountered any issues
Should
with that.
we just break that down a bit? Okay. So the
so
bathroom issue. Let's just break it down. Just tell me in the plainest terms.
There is a fear that if you allow transgender people to use the bathroom that lines up most of their gender, you're inviting other people into that space to commit crime, essentially. And it's a non-issue. It doesn't happen. But it's portrayed that way by media to aggravate and antagonize transgender individuals.
In fact, ironically, I believe trans people are vastly more likely to be sexually assaulted themselves going to the bathroom than whatever.
Yep. And these bathroom policies have caused not just transgender people, but cisgender people who look trans to face assault in bathrooms. So, yeah, that's something we don't really experience here.
We're talking about the general activities of anyone on the Isle of Man. So it's not just about in the restaurant, in the cafe. It could be the pub on a night out. It could be anywhere, can't it?
Yeah, so like on the pub on the night out, that's where a lot of my good experiences come from. Because I'll be sat down, I'll be having a drink, and either I'll look particularly, to use the phrase passing, I'll look non-passing, and that just means to look at me, you wouldn't know what gender I was, or you might perceive me to be the gender I don't want to be perceived as. To pass means I am looking at my perceived gender. And so those people generally come up to you with questions and ask you about it, and I've had more positive experiences in that regard. I mean, it still shouldn't be my job to educate people in the pub when I'm, 7 drinks in. But I'm happy to do it. Not everyone is, and it does help prevent, ignorance.
So
just terminology. Explain it there if you didn't catch it. Passing is when people look at you and immediately think that you're the gender which you identify as, and non-passing is due to the normalized way in which we see men and women. We or perceive them to be. We look at a trans person and see them not as their actual gender, but the one that they were assigned at birth.
Gosh, Sam, you're so good, aren't you? So, when we talk about the good experiences, say, and you're on a night out, how would they take their shape and form?
It's usually people coming up to me, asking me questions or showing me support. I had one incident where somebody came up to me with perceived malice in their actions, and another group who I wasn't affiliated with came up and defended me one night, which was really good and made me feel excellent. So it's stuff like that. The communities here generally are more accepting, so they don't like to see discrimination happen.
So, okay, I'll just try and take this another step. So you're out on an average, night out, Saturday, could be in Douglas, could be anywhere. So how often does it become an issue in your mind, or where somebody has a conversation with you? How often does that happen, or can you just have a general night where it never happens?
I think for me personally, I'm always aware of how I feel I'm being perceived by the people around me, just in general. I don't think that's a unique experience to transgender people, though. I think a lot of women feel that as well, and even some men. So I certainly wouldn't base my opinion on that solely on the fact that I'm trans.
But also, like, I mean, I've been out with you on more than one occasion, heard someone shout some dickhead remark at you. So it's not like that doesn't.
I don't
doesn't
notice
happen.
it.
Okay.
Uh,
Maybe it's nothing to do with you being trans. Maybe you're just unbearable.
I doubt that. I'm wonderful.
Yeah, I know you are.
But
But I mean, my experiences are just my experiences. I know of the people who have faced not just verbal abuse but physical abuse for their identity. So it does happen over here.
I think it's going to be curiosity, it's going to be fear, it's going to be ignorance. It's going to be a lot of Isle of Man bad things, but not just the Isle of Man. It could be anywhere, couldn't it?
No, well, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of really big trans issues, like in the UK, which I mean, you know more than I do, but I don't feel like they've passed over here, at least yet. There doesn't seem to be like a
No, there are large
barrage of
movements
hatred.
in the UK, like the LGBT Alliance, who have just been recognised as a charity who want to remove transgender people from the LGBT conversation. There is various lesbian-focused groups who don't want trans rights to be enacted in the UK. There's a huge trans exclusionary radical feminist movement, or TERF movement, in the UK. You might be familiar with names like J.K. Rowling in that regard, or Graham Linehan, who are very much proponents of anti-trans conversation, and that kind of conversation is growing in the UK. The Isle of Man has so far, I haven't seen that with the same capacity here. But if it goes unchallenged, we can see it grow here too. So it's important to challenge that kind of rhetoric.
Because I think that's the difference between, I think, the issues in the UK and here is, I think here the main issue is ignorance. I think the main issue is people don't know the difference, whereas I feel that there is a concerted effort in the UK of people who deliberately misphrase the definitions of gender to try and make trans people look crazy and actively try and stop what they see as a trans agenda. Whereas I don't think that happens here. What happens here is mostly just ignorance on what gender is.
And those two authors, I think, or celebrities that you mentioned before, have got quite a lot of pulling power, haven't they?
They do, yeah. Linehan is a writer for various TV series. Some of them are really good, which is unfortunate.
Father Ted, isn't it?
Father Ted, IT Crowd. IT Crowd had a very problematic trans episode, which really should have rung alarm bells when that came out initially for most people.
Okay.
But he's a good writer.
Okay, so I think that's something for our viewers to conduct a bit of research and see where the land lies there. Now, we've got loads of comments coming in, so we'll quickly fire through. It may not give us the opportunity for a yes or no answer, but I'll put them on the screen now. So, okay, right, here we go. So it's from Sarah. Tutors are given a scheme of work to follow, which includes sex and relationships. In recent times, PSHE lead teachers have been employed to improve the content and delivery of such lessons, which includes a lot of information being discussed here. So that's reassuring.
That's good.
That is reassuring.
I am aware that there is an issue, though. I mean, I think that this is relevant. There is an ongoing issue that's been a bugbear of mine, and I know some other people in the party, and that's just how much involvement religious groups on the island have in sex education in schools. So it wouldn't surprise me if
Yeah, that's something obviously
is something that might stop some of the sex education that we would like to appear.
Can we have a whole session dedicated to this on another
Sure.
broadcast?
Sure.
Because
No. Yeah. Okay.
remember, we've got the bishop sitting in Tynwald.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
We'll leave
Let's
religion
save
having
that
too much
one.
power to another night.
Let's save that one. Incredible. But I know what you mean about the what can I say? The free pass that religious groups have got to come into schools and share their beliefs. Right. So yeah, we had one from Harry there about deliberate fear mongering by the right wing press. We've got Dale. So I'm pulling these up on screen without even reading them. So we've got Dale. Focus seems to be on toilets, pronouns, elite sports, and toilets again. It'd be great to hear from Kerri what the main issues are from her perspective.
So yeah, this one's actually really good. I'll call it a question. The toilets issue I've referred to, but the sports issue is particularly interesting to deal with. So the issue comes from the belief that people with more testosterone have a greater advantage. You're familiar with like doping in the Olympics, for example, taking testosterone-based steroids to improve your sporting ability. And there's a misconception that trans women participating in women's sports therefore have an inherent advantage. However, there's evidence to demonstrate that trans women, no matter what point in their transition they are, don't have any identifiable advantage over other women in that sport. More often, you'll find that due to the hormone replacement therapy, transgender women in sports have less testosterone than their cisgender counterparts. So any advantage is removed by the treatment they're taking. Largely in sports, I think we should be moving towards height and weight-based categories over gender categories. And Sam should have shared a study.
But Dale's
Demonstrate
question, I believe it went. I don't know whether you read it when it came up on screen fully. Is he wanted to know what issues like locally that are more relevant to you personally or trans people on the island. I think that's what Dale was getting at anyway.
Yeah, on the island, I'm not aware of what the situation is. I know sports-wise, it depends on the club. There's no, as far as the Equality Act goes, you can't discriminate on a person based on their gender reassignment category. So if I attempted to attend an all-female sports group and they didn't let me, I could probably challenge that. I don't think I personally would because I wouldn't want to cause any issues there. But there are protections in place. And that'd be like done by a case-by-case issue.
That's reassuring because you can guarantee that on a national stroke international level that when the transgender topic comes into play, the likes of the right-wing press are jumping all over it. It's an absolute scandal.
Well, they're scared of change, aren't they? I mean, that's the fundamental issue, and I think that's where most of the hatred comes from, really, isn't it? It's fear mongering. It's just fear mongering.
Okay, we've got a question here from Kevin, which regards to medical practitioners here on the island in regards to transition compared to UK services, those further afield. So what?
So I'm actually super glad this question was asked. There is currently no Isle of Man service to cater for transgender health. And that's it. There's no services here. The current most accepted process over here is to raise the issue of your GP, who will raise the issue of mental health. You'll usually be assigned a psychiatrist, who will then get funding for you to be referred to the UK services, which puts you on a 3-year waiting list with the London Gender Identity Clinic. We don't have speech therapy over here. We don't have funding for cosmetic treatments over here. So we only fund core procedures, which are outlined in the Gender Dysphoria Policies Combined document from 2013. So that's things like reassignment surgeries and hormone replacement therapy, and doesn't include things like facial hair removal.
Does it involve speech therapy?
It should involve speech therapy, but we don't have any speech therapists on the island to afford that treatment. Or at least we didn't when I inquired of my general practitioner several years ago.
So just to highlight how important this issue is, because I don't think many people really realise how important it is for people who feel the need to transition to be able to transition, is the suicidality rate and the rates of depression among transgender people who are able to transition is remarkably high. And I don't seem to have the figure here, but I can find it. But it's remarkably high, whereas the effect of gender transition has on people's mental health is overwhelmingly positive. There's no what a common misconception that's thrown around in the right-wing press is that a lot of people end up regretting any kind of transition, and so it's not like worth doing. But that isn't true at all. Study after study after study has indicated that the people that go through this, except for a very, 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 very minute amount, either have it has a very positive effect on their mental health, or it has very little effect on their mental health at all. So it's overwhelmingly positive. And the various other studies have proven that when it comes to transgender people's quality of life, it is much lower than that of cis people, but it is entirely based around it's entirely based on how much dysphoria they feel and how accepted they feel in their communities. So being able to transition is incredibly important medically. It's not a moral issue, it is a medical one.
I've got to ask the question. So the GP at the surgery has a patient asking for treatment, asking for help, and where does it go from there, Kerri? That doesn't sound to be quite a pleasant process.
For me, I didn't see my actual primary doctor when I came out to the medical institution. I asked to see someone else because of the risk that my GP would be transphobic or not want to support my transition. My GP turned out to be more than accommodating. He has been a wonderful part of my treatment process, and I rely on him a lot. However, this isn't the case. I know one older transgender woman who, when she first raised it with a GP, was essentially laughed out of the GP practice. That GP was later fired for discrimination. But that's the kind of thing we can face trying to come out to the medical practices. If the GP is accepting and knows the care path, they're expected to raise it with community mental health, and you'll be assigned a psychiatrist. My first person I came out to referred me to a neurologist, which is insane, for one thing. It's not a brain issue.
Was that distressing?
It was remarkably distressing. It was 2 weeks that I had to deal with waiting for a response for a place that I wasn't supposed to be referred to in the first place. The neurologist later informed the GP of the correct process and the WPATH healthcare requirements for transgender people, and I was referred to a psychiatrist. And in a few weeks, I had my first psychiatry appointment, where I then had to prove to a psychiatrist that I was transgender, as much as they were willing to believe it, so that they would get my funding approved and refer me to the clinic in the UK. And my clinic referral took 2 years. before my first appointment, and then it was a year wait for the first appointment.
Has that changed? Is it a
No,
quicker
it's
process? It's worse.
It's worse. The UK and specifically the Conservative Party have been defunding transgender healthcare in the UK, which has put a huge strain on the services available for the UK and for us because we rely on their services for healthcare reasons. Like I said, we don't have any local services for trans health.
And
Actually, I wish I'd sent you this picture before the stream, Jed, but another trans friend of mine sent me a image of just how much paperwork they have to a trans person has to fill in to be accepted as their gender by government. I don't know whether you're able to show it or not. Would that be difficult at this point?
If you can screenshot
Actually,
it.
Tell you what, I think I can
You
stream
you
it
can do it,
over
can't
my
you?
one.
Yes,
Let me
you
do
are.
that.
So
Yeah, I can.
technically gifted.
I'm technical.
And yeah,
Oh, me
my
too.
file looks very much the same.
Yeah. Sorry, I just realised that I need to put it on a screen, so I'm not showing their name or anything. Sorry, it's just that's pretty important.
Well, remember,
There we
I've
go.
got, I've
What I
got
will
two
do-
screenshots here. Remember, they're in the bag.
I do. Yeah. I will. I do want to turn to that. It's just we were talking about the extra hoops that trans people have to go through that people I don't think really appreciate.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to get the screen wrong and it's going to show something weird. Let's go with
blimey.
this one. Oh yeah, that seems to be right. Okay. If I go to that there.
Oh.
Right. Yes. So here, as you can see, is just the amount of paperwork that you have to send in to government. And this is just not something you'd think about. And I know this has nothing to do with the question initially, which is medical hurdles that have to be gone through, but just administrative hurdles in general are just made much worse for trans people because it's as if the system has been set up not taking them into account, and now it's just seems to be impossible to traverse.
Can I just cut in to answer a question that Harry Johnson has asked?
Yeah.
And that is, do we have the means to provide hormone treatment or other therapies on the island? Yes, we do. But a lot of GPs will not prescribe hormones without a specialist recommending it. And the wait to get a specialist to recommend it is really a long wait, anywhere from 3 to 5 years. There are private groups in the UK. Gender GP spring to mind. Which, if you have the money, obviously, and can afford to do, is highly recommended over the NHS, just because of how slow and bogged down the NHS is. But over here, GPs can prescribe puberty blockers, they can prescribe affirmative hormone replacement therapy, and there are cosmetic therapies we have access to, such as laser hair removal and beauty therapies. But no surgeries are accommodated for over here.
Yeah.
Wow, that is
So
that is
just because
something
you
else.
mentioned the image we sent you earlier, Jed, maybe
Yes.
it's worth putting that on now so that we can explain it. Just because I'm aware that we have a limited amount of time, and I think it's an important one.
So we've
It's,
got two
if we go
images.
to not to the map, but the other one, please, because we haven't really talked about the map.
Yeah.
So this is a. Do you want to explain it, or should I? Oh, I don't. Really
I mean, I can try and explain this. So the image on screen now is the gender-bred person, and it's a commonly used exercise to demonstrate the differences between gender identity, gender expression, and biological sex, as well as attraction. To sort of bring it all together, identity is who you are, expression is how you wish to be perceived, sex is your biological component, and attraction is just who you're attracted to. So people of varying genders can also have varying attractions. Just because you're transgender doesn't mean you have to be straight, gay, lesbian, or any other. They're completely independent things.
Yeah, and I think that it's not just obviously as this image highlights, it's not just trans people who suffer from this confusion. It's the false belief that all these things are inherently linked with each other leads to a lot of people being disenfranchised and a lot of people being misunderstood. Humans are complicated, and it's quite frustrating when people pretend like we're not. We we have many intricacies.
This is the nub of it, isn't it? Really?
What do you mean by that? Yeah. I mean it's understanding that that we have many different configurations. Oh, he's blocking you.
I know. There we go. We've got the map. We'll have to pull the map up. You can talk us through this one.
Oh, sure, I can if you want. Well, one of the things that we had in our list of things that we wanted to talk about is I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking over you.
Go for it.
One of the things we had in the list of things we wanted to talk about is that gender is linked to society's like concepts of gender, and that it's not. There's a lot of confusion, as I said before, is that people think it's inherently linked to biological sex, but historically, that isn't the case. Littered throughout the world, and this is what the map is showing here, are different societies from all over the place: America, Hawaii, Tahiti, Pakistan, India, all over the place, which were societies that accepted people of different types of genders, sometimes males and intersex people being more feminine, females and intersex people being more masculine, mixes of the two, something else altogether. Some had 3 or 4 different genders. So the thought that this is a newfangled thing is and that it's like something that's been dreamt up in like some liberal university somewhere is not true. Like people have existed throughout history in many different types of genders, and it's closed-minded and frankly anti-scientific to think otherwise. It's a part of humanity. It's always been here. Humans are complicated, like I said.
And of course, it shouldn't be anything different. I'm just whizzing through the comments here. Lots of thank yous and applause for tonight, by the way. So let me see. Oh, right, here we go. Interesting one from Dale again. How have off-island gender services been prioritised over COVID?
I honestly can't tell you the answer to this. I don't know personally. I know that patient transfers have continued to operate for off-island healthcare needs. I don't know if any transgender people during any lockdown has had to attend the clinics in London. So yeah, I just can't tell you. If things have been operating as normal, then yes, they would have continued to be taken over through patient transfers and brought back again, and then had to isolate. But that's if things have been operating as normal.
Unlikely. And then I've got this comment from Chris. Having to prove your gender to a psychiatrist must be quite a stigmatising experience in itself. Would that be the way?
I know I personally played up a lot of my history of cross-dressing to gain affirmation from a psychiatrist, and that shouldn't be necessary. But I know I felt if I went as extreme as possible, they'd have to believe me and they'd have to get me the help I needed. There's a specialist team of psychiatrists who review you in a gender identity clinic in the UK who are better equipped to handle that process and can ask you questions that are better to identify your needs than we have over here in the Isle of Man. So really, if I had to give any psychiatrist reviewing a transgender patient's validity, I would say just err on the side of caution and go with what the patient says. If they say they need the healthcare, assume they need the healthcare. Because it's incredibly difficult to prove you are the gender you actually are perceived as and the gender you want to be.
Okay.
I met someone when I went to Guernsey for Pride there, who was autistic and a transgender woman, and they were told by their psychiatrist for well over a year that them being transgender was part of their autism and was not at all anything to do with
I've heard
them
of that
actually being
happening.
transgender.
Yeah, I've heard of that happening here as well. Even though within the transgender demographic, there is a disproportionate number of people who are also autistic. A lot of people who are autistic face additional obstacles in acquiring gender reaffirming treatment, and that's largely because of their autism.
Tell me, are you aware of any other countries or jurisdictions that seem to handle the treatment and care and services any better?
Ireland, I know, have a form of informed consent. Scotland, through the Scottish NHS, are a lot faster than the UK, but follow a lot of the same patterns. Canada and America, it varies state to state. In some places in Canada, it's really fast, really quick. They've got world-class surgeons. Likewise, in America, some states are really good at dealing with it, but other states are religiously, vehemently opposed to it. Thailand is, though more famous for the unfortunate comical sides we see in media, actually very good at it, and I think the world's best surgeon operates there. So,
is it fair to say, though, that if someone hasn't got the bravery or the opportunity to go and see a doctor or engage in the process, the transformation, then surely they're going to be under more stress and have more angst.
Yeah, I think it's on the healthcare service to provide an environment that is welcoming and encouraging to people who want to raise those issues. Likewise with other sensitive issues such as sexual health care or more sensitive cancers like prostate cancer or cervical cancer. You want your healthcare service to be a place where you feel safe admitting you have these issues. And that's down to the healthcare providers.
It sounds like we're not really prepared fully for this.
One thing I've tried to encourage is for GPs to put LGBT plus literature in their waiting rooms. So like you might see for eye tests or cancer screenings or sepsis, there should also be LGBTQ literature, so you know that that's an issue that the practice is willing to discuss. I've not seen in any GP I've been in any literature supporting LGBT healthcare issues. So that's a big one.
That would be an easy campaign, wouldn't it? That'd be a simple thing to do, surely.
It should be. I don't know why they don't.
Maybe that's something that we could drive, I think.
You said before, Jed, about how it looks like we're not prepared for this. I think was the word you used, and it's worth highlighting that although the stigmatism and stuff is terrible, the fact is that transgender people have been here the whole time, and the fact that so many of them, or a growing number of them, feel at least on some level comfortable to be out and proud about it is probably a good sign.
I mean, in the UK, you can go back as 1940 for the first trans woman to undergo surgery.
Yeah.
The science isn't new or groundbreaking. It's stuff we've known for almost a century now.
Yeah. So I mean, there are issues, but I guess what I'm saying is simply because there's more people willing to stand up and say that they are trans. I mean, that's probably a sign that at least we're moving in a better direction than we were in the past. Would you say that's fair? Or
I'd say that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid we're coming up to an hour. I'll just see if we can pluck any more comments. So Alan is back on again, Alan Shea. So we asked for that information to be put out 20 years ago, but they said No, including Douglas Library. Okay.
Okay.
I can say since the Henry Bloom Noble Library on the High Street has at least during LGBTQ month in 2019, 2020, I wasn't aware of. But in 2018, they did have a queer table which included books published by transgender people, lesbian people, gay people, people of color.
But it's not acceptable if that. I mean, what you were talking about before,
Well,
and I
yeah.
assume this comment is relation to is there being like brochures or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like, it's where to get help. No, that is very concerning. I mean, Douglas Library is something I do have some say over. So that's a good point. But I'll raise that as an issue. That is, if we don't have literature there to point people in the right direction, we definitely need to.
But I'd also compound that by saying we don't really have the services to signpost people to here.
Fair.
Which just further compounds the problem.
That's true. In fact, when I've seen people reach out to others in regards to being like bullied or whatever based upon their sexuality or their gender identity or anything like that, I've usually been told to direct them to the likes of Isle of Pride to try and talk to the people there, because you're right. There's not like any real like
I know,
structure.
Personally, I open myself up to any transgender person or any person questioning their gender. If they want to talk to somebody, my email is open, my Facebook Messenger is open, and I encourage them to come forward to me, and I'll discuss it, completely sensitively. I won't ever expose anybody unduly, but that's something I personally undertake because that's not undertaken by any current service.
You can also reach out to me, but I'm very likely to just point you towards Kerri. So,
Well, I've just thrown in another comment about having accessibility to literature all year round. I think you can see the commentator who's just posted that up on the
absolutely. And I will chase that at the next council meeting. We'll go and investigate that. That's
right.
I mean,
you have the keys to the library.
Well, I don't have the keys to the library, but I can at least look into it and raise stink about it. I will.
That is.
And I'm sure if Councillor Watson is watching right now, he'll join me in that sentiment.
I can tell you now, if you do go to the Henry Bloom Noble Library, you can ask for that literature there. They will be able to find it for you. They do have copies in stock. I can't speak for the Family Library or any other libraries on the Isle of Man. I'd hope that even like Ramsey Town Hall and Onken Library, that they'd have some. But it's worth raising the issue with libraries on the island.
Absolutely. In fact, it sounds like something that if it isn't in libraries already, and it's certainly worth looking into, it sounds like something we should definitely be pushing for as a party, to be honest. And doctor's surgeries. I mean, these are easy wins. I mean, you literally,
think so.
Yeah. Like, I mean, this is ridiculous. Just something that says, it's all right if you don't conform to the gender norm or whatever it would be,
Are you questioning your gender? Your doctor can help.
Maybe.
I tell you what, let's set ourselves a task, and we'll come back, say, in 3 weeks' time. Okay, we'll have a quick look round, do a bit of a survey of the doctor's surgeries, the general practices, and the libraries, and see what is actually available. Perhaps if we can make some changes.
I think, ironically, Jed, 3 weeks' time on a Wednesday will be the day of the council meeting where I will bring it up. So I think, ironically, I might be busy.
Okay, well, following that, we can have a get together. But
but we'll get together.
It's reassuring to read that there is a lot of warmth regarding this subject on the island, and I think the input that we've had tonight, just on this our little Facebook page, and the comments that we've had and the views, it's been great, and I'm really grateful to Sam for putting it together, but most of all for Kerri for being in the hot seat.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me. It's an important discussion, at least in my opinion, and I'm sure in Sam's. So I'm glad for the opportunity to speak on any platform, really.
Gender's not owned by anyone. Gender's owned by all of us, I guess.
Well, like, gender is an intrinsically individual component of who you are.
Yeah.
And you deserve the right to your own gender and how you want to be perceived. So.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
I think we're not even halfway through. We'll have to come back. So say in a few weeks' time, following the council meeting, and certainly what you've said tonight, I'll be frank with you, is on my radar. Okay, and I'll be absolutely blunt with you. It's been enlightening what you said tonight, and I hope that anyone that sees this will share those views and feelings, because for you to come and be in the hot seat, as it were, and explain how things are on the Isle of Man, it's been most enlightening. So I'll just say thank you very much, and we'll come back. Let's make a date. Let's make it 3 weeks time, three and a bit weeks time, Sam.
Yeah, sure. We'll make a date after we've finished streaming. If you're happy to come and talk again.
Absolutely. I'll be glad to come back.
That's great. Okay.
Councillor Watson, you'll be glad to hear, has messaged me. He is watching, and I'm sure he will join me in the council chamber inquiring about this issue.
Oh, hang on. We've had the Manx Rainbow Association put a series of books with rainbow codes in quite a few libraries, and we saw them when we did the library report. That's Claire Barber.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you, Claire. I'd like to.
If they're still there, that's great.
They're still there. That's great.
Obviously, the Manx Rainbow Association no longer operate on the island. So as long as that's something they left behind, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice
It's worth looking into. We'll definitely look into it.
Nice one to finish off with. Okay, that's great. We'll press the button. Okay. Good night, folks.
Good night.
No.